Good afternoon and welcome to Markets Today. I'm your host, Mbithe Mwema. Co-hosting the show with me is Mr. George Bodo. George, what's happening in your world?
Lots of things happening, Bive.
Yes?
We are still waking up to news that the finance minister was presented before court. Well, we don't call them finance minister, we call them the cabinet secretary for treasury.
For treasury.
Yes.
And I suppose he was with a permanent secretary as well.
And this permanent secretary, they're all presented to a court. It has continued to have very significant implications for the country. One is that the treasury has a vacuum. When you have top two principal accounting officers for the treasury out, then the treasury is essentially in a vacuum.
That's very true.
That exacerbates the situation that we have already with the county government, the division of revenue bill, that they are unable to agree. The Senate and Parliament and the National Assembly are unable to agree.
Okay.
That means counties are not able to pay salaries.
So there's a bit of a stalemate with regards to the process of cash flows.
And now that stalemate has been exacerbated by this event that happened yesterday. So essentially, we just don't know who's going to make payments out of treasury.
That's very true.
Yes.
But I was looking at it from the element of sovereign risk. I think when you're looking at the local markets, especially the equities and fixed income as well, they're largely foreign dominated.
Yeah.
So I actually thought that we'd see a bit of jitters this week. We haven't seen with regards to volume, but of interest, from Monday up until today, it's all net sellers, largely out of Safaricom. We still haven't seen weakness with Safaricom and equity as well as KCB.
Yeah.
In fact, today Safaricom has traded at 27.5. Yesterday it was at 27.25. 7.8 million shares are trading. I think my concern when I'm looking at it from an investment perspective is to ask, the CS and the PS, who are the chief accounting officers for the nation of Kenya, they're the people who've been going out to the external markets, raising Eurobonds, and just giving comfort with regards to the sovereign risk, in as much as the debt and the capital markets are concerned to the market. So when whatever decision is made, I think there could be a slight jitters because everybody's wondering, is everything okay? If the two chief accountants are accused for corruption, whether it's the charges are low or whether they're impactful with regards to the potential amounts of jail time, of possible possible fines. The question is, what is happening? If your chief accountants are not credible, then who is credible?
You make a very credible, a very important point. So there are two considerations here. You have two faces to it. One is that the credibility phase, because the CS for Treasury, Henry Rotich, and the PS are the face of Kenya in the national market.
That's very true.
Right. So whatever happens to them has an impact on Kenya, on asset prices.
Let's see what happens. Because Turkey fired their central bank equivalent governor, and the markets were actually, they penalized that country for that one decision.
And you saw what happened to the lira against the US.
Exactly.
And lira has become, you wonder whether lira has become a politician. But that's a discussion for another. But the second aspect of this is that you also have to factor in the judicial process, the local judicial process. There's an arrest, there's a presentation to court. This is a very long, drawn-out process that will not be concluded in the next 2 weeks.
Unless of course, an executive directive is issued to actually expel this.
So we expect the president to come out today, tomorrow, or Friday.
Fair enough.
To provide a guidance.
Just to give clarity
he's more likely to appoint an acting president, an acting CS and acting PS.
But then on the positive side, I think there's certainly goodwill in seeing that the top officers who are not able to be accountable, or in other words, have abused their roles and their offices, are being brought to book. The question is whether this is short term or whether it's actually going to see the end of day with regards to actions being taken against such people. Because if this happens and it says the end of day, it certainly sends a very strong message. And on the flip side, it does give a positive outlook on the investment case for Kenya, because now corruption is being addressed and maybe something will happen. But George, let me bring you, let's hope so. Again, let's come back to the Central Bank of Kenya. They're announcing the MPC decision today at 4:30. Yeah,
the MPC, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Kenya, is sitting today. I don't know, my expectation is that it's certainly going to maintain a neutral stance.
Exactly.
Just like they've done a couple of meetings back. I don't expect, because I think most of the indicators, they look at the headline indicators that they look at have been well anchored, so I don't expect much.
Okay.
And they say they're going to, the press release is going to be out by 4:30.
By 4:30.
So
I look forward to see that.
exactly,
I definitely agree with you. I don't think there'll be a change to the benchmark rate. But also just going over that story, Central Bank of Nigeria had its meeting Monday and Tuesday. They came out with a press release yesterday. Again, their benchmark rate remained unchanged, 13.5%. The only difference between us and Nigeria, inflation in Nigeria is a big problem. The central bank there thinks it will close the year at 11.9%.
Yeah.
That's pretty extensive.
Yeah.
But they're also concerned about the economic outlook both locally in Nigeria and globally. So for me, I'm actually waiting to see what the NPC statement says in terms of economic outlook, the status on demonetization, and if there's any semblance of any sentiment that they can be able to share with what they think will happen or what scenarios they can help us bring out with regards to the rate cap repeal.
I think for me the key thing will be the language that they're using.
The language.
Especially when they get the projection of inflation. It will be good to see. It will
What
be
language?
keen to see
Absolutely
whether they've anchored it or they still expect an upside in inflation, because then what they project means that you could tell to project along what the decision point in the next meeting.
Exactly. Yeah. Then the final news for us, Kenya Airways yesterday, Parliament rejects the proposal for them taking over the airport and instead proposes that the company should be nationalized. And it has taken the decision back to the government and said, come up with a new proposal on how this company can be nationalized. Do you have any thoughts?
I think that's a bad idea. I mean, I've always said that nationalizing Kenya Airways is a pretty bad idea because the government is not the best businessman in this town.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And the government has not put forward plans that they're going to, a recovery plan for Kenya Airways. Remember that Kenya Airways is dealing with much external factors.
Exactly.
That nationalizing them will not smoothen those problems, right? So it's a bad move for me.
It's a bad move, but maybe the government is looking at it in terms of a public good where they can be able to keep putting money in and not expecting a return.
There, because Kenya Airways is not a national strategic asset in my assessment, because if you look at all the tourism blueprints in Kenya, they do not place Kenya Airways at the center. I will give an example. For instance, Dubai has a big tourism blueprint that places Dubai as a big aviation distribution hub. And at the center of that is Emirates Airlines.
Emirates.
Right? Essentially, if you see Emirates, you see Dubai. Now, that makes Emirates an airline a big national strategic asset.
But Kenya Airways is not there.
I don't see a tourism blueprint that puts Kenya Airways as a strategic asset. So it's on that basis. It's a bad idea. It's always a bad idea.
We need to put you in front of Parliament to convince them otherwise.
That's the problem. Politicians making decisions about business issues.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you have it. Just before we started the show, NSC turnover was at 450 million shillings. Again, we are not seeing any triggers or jitters with regards to volume. But what is of interest is the foreigners are actually net sellers out of the market. As we were coming to the show, the market had traded 7.8 million Safaricom shares at 23.5 versus the price, 27.5. It closed yesterday at 27.25. Barclays Bank yesterday, 15.5 million shares traded at 10.3. Foreign buyer, foreign seller. We've seen a lot of similar trades happening of this magnitude over the last couple of weeks. What is happening there? Today, we have Mr. Gift Corey, who is a research analyst at Apex, telling us what's happening in Barclays through his initiation of coverage. We take a short break on the daily commodities. As always, catch us on the live YouTube stream on the Metropole channel. Don't go anywhere.